Hello. It is my great pleasure today to be able to talk to one of my dearest friends, Kathleen Dassima Murphy, who I'm speaking to from my home in New Jersey, and she's coming from Ramdas's room in Ramdas's house in Haiku on Maui in Hawaii. And it is such a pleasure and an honor, Dassima, to see you and to have you with us this afternoon. Um, this series is called Conversations in Service and was inspired originally by Mike Kroll, who many people who have been to Ram Dass's retreats on Maui know quite well. And our idea was to talk about how service applies to spiritual life, or how spiritual life applies to service. And that was a big theme in Ram Dass's life. And all of us who were close to Ram Dass got to see one of the greatest examples of service we've ever seen when Dassima arrived on Maui in 2005 and stayed to take care of Ram Dass. And so welcome aboard, Dassima. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, John. Such a
Oh,
pleasure.
what a treat. What a treat. We had many wonderful times together on Maui.
Yeah, we
And
sure did.
yeah,
I
yeah,
believe last year was the first year you didn't come for a visit
that's
because of
right.
COVID.
That's
Yes.
because of COVID. Yeah, yeah, COVID changed our lives dramatically in the past year. And
Sure did.
it's interesting as well as you mentioned that, Dassima. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about um, anything that Ram Dass might have said or what his reflections might have been about what we just went through in the past year.
I think he would say everything is just perfect. As Maharaji said to him when he wanted to take his van and go to Bangladesh because of the immense suffering and poverty and famine that was going on. And he told Maharaji he was going, and Maharaji said, if you wish, but it's all perfect. Yeah.
It's all perfect.
And
Yeah.
I think Ram Dass grew into that. He was
Uh-huh.
accepting of what happened. And there was a lesson from everything that transpired.
You know, I thought of that also with uh, Larry Brilliant's work with smallpox and Maharaji's statement that it's all perfect. But then he seemed Maharaji seemed very interested in alleviating smallpox and eradicating smallpox and
Yeah.
putting Larry in charge of that, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Um, I'm pleased that Ram Dass wasn't here to go through it. It would have been fine for him, but I just think that it would have been. He loved people, and he just loved being with people, and for him not to be able to see and listen to people's stories, it would have been very difficult for him. And
Mm.
the anyone who was in the house would have had to stay in here 24/7. um, so it would have been quite difficult, and we would have been so protective of his health that he would not have enjoyed it.
He would have been plotting to sneak out.
He'd probably
Oh
wait till I
boy.
went out and got the boys, the caregivers, and gone on an adventure into the woods or
Uh-huh.
something. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was just remembering that last journey that we had when we were there in August of 2019, and he had an infection on his leg and he couldn't go in the ocean. So we went to the forest. Your idea to go up to the forest in Makawao, and he just loved it.
Yeah, it was
Loved it.
great. Yeah.
Walked him through the forest in his wheelchair.
And we stopped and did a Hanuman Chalisa.
That's
It was
right.
quite beautiful.
It was just amazing.
And you pushed his wheelchair without him in it. He was in the buggy.
I had
Yes.
the spare wheelchair.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was like when the president flies, they take two Air Force Ones for him in case one breaks down. And I had the spare wheelchair. Matthew, I think, was in charge of the main one.
Yes.
Yeah, and one of the things that always amazed me was the ways in which you were so thoughtful about not just taking care of him, but giving him those kinds of experiences that he would so love, and really honoring how much he loved being with people. And the last time we talked, we were talking about the balance that you had to maintain between keeping him healthy and rested and giving him the kinds of experiences and socializing that he really loved doing.
Oh, he surely loved people.
Yeah.
He really did. Yeah, and it was somewhat of a challenge, but if Ramdas wanted to do something, he would do it. Remember the last retreat, he was quite ill. It was in December, the month, just about 2 weeks before he passed. And he wanted to do there was the retreat was scheduled. He wanted to do it. And so we talked about it with him and suggested that, well, why don't you, maybe just go on stage and just, say hello to everybody, and that would be it. And he said no. And he really rallied. He got his energy was restored just by seeing and being with all those people. And we we had a plan that he sort of bought into, that we would do this ceremony on the last day where he would bless these Tulsi malas, and with Maharaji's thread on it, and he would bless them, and then he would give them individually to every participant in the retreat, as part of a ceremony. And he agreed that he would bless them and just sit on stage for a while with Krishnadas and them. And then right as we were ready to start, we said, okay, now Ramdas, you'll go up on the stage. And he said, no. He insisted on being there and blessing everybody who was there. So he definitely had a mind of his own.
And to think of it, that in actuality, he was near death that day. It was about 2 weeks later that he actually died, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And yet he gave everything. He gave everything. It was just. And I was reading in Being Ramdas, the autobiography, how he talked about in his younger life, just sort of going for it all the time, pushing himself so hard.
Yes.
And as long as I knew him, he continued to do that. Didn't matter how old he was or what was going on. He went for it.
He sure did.
And I think sometimes watching him go for it, I watch you, Dassima would be like, oh God, what am I going to do about this? How am I going to get him to survive this? But 15 years, almost 15 years, right?
Yes.
You were with him?
Oh, yes. Yeah. The best years of my life.
So how has it been different now that it's been a year and a half?
Wow. Yeah, it's in June, it'll be a year and a half. Really
Yeah.
amazing. It's his presence is so deeply felt here in the house still. His presence, his energy, it's especially in this area here, but in really the whole house, and even the even the grounds feel sacred to me. Um,
Mm.
and it is different. His body isn't here, but certainly his spirit roams around on a regular basis. And people who come up here to this room really feel his presence. He had studied about death for decades and was so interested and excited about what happens after death. And he loved to read volumes and volumes about after death. Um, and so it wasn't totally, um, for many of us, death is um, an outrage, or like, how could that happen to me? Or you're just not ready for it. But he was ready for death. And he, I know he's happy, and we're happy he's happy, even though we miss his physical presence. But we have many reminders here at the house
Uh-huh.
to bring us back to him and to Maharaji. There's one portrait that, for me, that um, it's almost alive at this point. It's in the living room on up on the wall of the puja table, and whenever I have a question or need guidance, I just look into his eyes and I get my answer.
Uh, Sweet.
Yeah. So it is certainly different. I'm sitting here looking out at the swimming pool, and every time I think of that swimming pool, not only how difficult it was to get the swimming pool here because there wasn't one, and Ramdas was truly a water baby, but how he loved going in. It was a ritual going into the water. Just he's on the second floor and taking that elevator down, and just the smile on his face, and getting him into and there was a pool lift, and he would go like this, for the elevator to go down, and he'd
Uh-huh.
get in that water and he would just beam. He was so relaxed, and he had his freedom in the water. The
Right.
the parts of the body that weren't working anymore were free, and he was free, and he would just you know be so happy.
Yeah. 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 You're reminding me of so many things. Um,
Mm.
First, your statement about his fondness for books about the afterlife. And he had one in particular. One year when I was visiting, he pulled it out, as he would often do with books, but this was a book about uh, afterlife. It's called Backwards,
Yes.
and he held it up and he said, "You have to read this book." And I said, "Okay." And I took down the title and the author, and then somewhere I lost it. And the next time I came, he no matter how old he got, his memory was
Yeah.
usually amazing. And
Yeah.
so, it'd been several months since I was there, and I came back in and I said, "You were telling me about a book that you really like about the afterlife." And he looked at me like, "Yes." And I told you the name of it and I told you to read it. Why are you asking me again?
uh,
And then he kind of like he reached around, he found it and he held it up. He said, "This is the book. read this book.
And what do you think of the book?
I thought it was amazing,
Mhm.
really amazing. It was so fascinating that it was, a different genre really than we were used to things like the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads and um, stories about Maharaji and miracles, love, and so on. This was a whole different thing, and he loved it, and I thought it was really quite remarkable.
Mhm.
And then I was thinking about, you said how difficult it was to get the pool. So when I think my first visit to the new house on Manawai Place, um, there was nothing there. And then the second visit I came, there was a big hole in the ground. And you were getting frustrated with the pool builder because the pool wasn't manifesting. All you had
No.
was a big hole in the ground for a
Yeah.
long time. And then the next time I came, the hole in the ground was full of concrete, but there still was no swimming pool.
Yeah.
I That was the time you had to talk with the pool
Yes.
man.
The
And
pool, the contractor um, had a propensity to hire surfers, and that's not a necessarily a great thing on Maui. As soon if the surf was good, everybody had a cold.
no work.
Yeah.
Let's go surfing now.
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing.
That took about 18 months to get that pool in and ready.
Finish.
Yes. And
Yeah.
Ram Dass was very concerned about um, the um, the dimensions of the pool and his ability to be able to stand even in the deep end. He was really anxious to get that going.
Get it just right.
Yes.
And he did love it. He so many times said, the water is where I feel free.
Yeah. And
And,
he truly was free in the water.
yeah, and many afternoons we were down there dancing to your tapes, your music. And then we had a personal trainer who you had on
Yeah,
recording. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Uh-huh. That was, I mean, such wonderful things. Part of what I was thinking as I was reflecting on our conversation today was just how, I don't want to use the word mundane, but just how simple and human life was for the most part around Ram Dass and at the house.
Yes.
That it was just very human.
Mm-hmm.
It, wasn't anything mystical. Or the other day, I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine who I've just gotten to know in the past couple of years, and he's just learning about Ram Dass. And he referred to Ram Dass's big ashram on Maui, and I said, Ram Dass didn't have a big ashram on Maui. And he said, well, you used to go there and visit. I said, yeah, it was his house.
Yeah.
It was his
Yeah.
home. And he just liked to have guests in his home.
Yeah.
And I was also remembering, you mentioned the other day when we spoke, that you're moving a garden moving a garden to make room for a mandir. And we'll get into what that's all about maybe later. But it reminded me of what a delight it was for you. Ram Dass once said to me in the early days how delighted he was that the house was providing a place for you to garden and create landscapes. And it was pretty barren except for a few tall palm trees when you first moved in there.
Yeah.
It
It
was
was
very
a horse
pretty.
farm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there had to be lots of room for the horses.
Yeah. You know, that
And
that's get ahead. You were going to say something.
well, I was just going to say that he said, Dassima, he said, I get so happy watching her plant trees and plants and flowers and all this stuff. He said, she's having a ball and I love it.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah.
I
I
remember there
thought of
were
that. I
times
wondered if I had ever told you that.
when we were planting, it'd be 7 o'clock at night and I'd be still out there and just trying to get a couple of more plants planted. And when I came in, Ramdas said, "You're late for dinner."
Yeah, but you turned that place into a tropical paradise.
You know, I was
Really?
reminded yesterday that one of the things that Ramdas wanted was the the front garden, the front yard to look like a jungle, you know, with tropical palm trees and tropical flowers. So that was one of the first things we endeavored to do. And
Ah,
you had mentioned the mandir, and we're so excited about the mandir. We're going to start the construction on the end of May. As a matter of fact, the 28th of May, we have the people, I guess, I don't know what you call them, the contractor.
contractors.
The contractors coming in, and we're
We hope they're
going to
not
start the
surfers.
building. And we cleared out one of the gardens, part of one of the gardens yesterday, and I just was reflecting. It was interesting after watching it grow for 15 years and then seeing part of it being taken away, but only for a really good purpose.
Uh-huh.
We're so excited about building a home for Hanuman.
Now, tell
He
me about the Maui Hanuman.
mhm. The Maui, the Hawaiian Hanuman here at the house um, was actually put together, built in 2019. And it was completed in April of 2019. And one of the people on our board, Steve Dowman, he had conversations with Ramdas about having a temple here on Maui, and Ramdas thought that was a wonderful idea. So Steve pursued. First of all, he thought he needed to get the proper Hanuman that also embodied Maui. And Maui, of course, is considered to be the heart space of the planet. And yes, and so we went out a couple of times and we looked at different Hawaiian carvers, and he eventually found this carver who was just a beautiful soul and did beautiful work. He had no idea who Hanuman was, but at one point he called or text. He sent a text to Stever and said, "I am no longer putting Hanuman together. Hanuman is doing it himself."
Wow.
He really got the vibe.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well,
So
in state,
the day it was finished, um, Stever picked up the Hanuman and brought it here to the house for Ramdas to see and bless. And it was beautiful. Hanuman came in the house and he had a blindfold on. Um, and we did a ceremony. It was just beautiful. We did arti and a Hanuman Chalisa. It was just spontaneous. So it's a beautiful Hawaiian Hanuman
And
carved
it made of
from
wood.
it's carved of monkey pod, which is very appropriate. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we're going to start construction on the Mandir the end of this month, and hopefully, we're hoping that it'll be completed in about 2 months or so. There'll be additional things to do after that. So we're putting a list together of everything we need in order to accomplish that goal.
I was thinking after we spoke, and you were talking about removing the garden that you had so skillfully installed, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, or whatever it was. Um, reminded me of a Tibetan sand painting.
Yes,
How the
the
Tibetan
mandala.
monks,
Yes,
yeah, 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 and then just sweep it away after
that's right.
creating this incredibly beautiful thing. So just in
Lessons
case
in
there's been,
impermanence.
nothing is permanent, right?
Yeah.
Everything changes. Just in case there's anybody listening who isn't really familiar with Hanuman, maybe you could say a little bit about who Hanuman is and
Uh-huh.
why Hanuman was so important to Ramdas.
Mm-hmm. A Hanuman is part of the Ram lineage, and um, Hanuman was a servant. He is the epitome of what seva is, and what it is to serve. And Hanuman, Ram, of course, was the king, and he was a beautiful manifestation of someone in public office. He really served the people. And Hanuman, he he just embodied whatever he was right there. Um he served him impeccably. And one time Ram said to Hanuman, "Who are you, monkey?" And Hanuman responded, "When I don't know who I am, I serve you. When I know who I am you." One time when Ram was in battle, his beloved brother Lakshman was wounded. Um, and it looked like it was, he wasn't going to make it. And it was decided that the only thing that would save him would be this special herb on the mountain, and I think it was in Sri Lanka, but I'm not sure where it was. So he flew. Hanuman heard this, and he flew all the way to, let's say it was Sri Lanka, and got to the mountain and knew he had to get those herbs. But, he got to the mountain and thought, well, I'm a monkey. How am I going to know which is the right herb? So instead of just trying to bring some herbs back that might not be correct, he lifted the whole mountain and
Not the whole
flew the
mountain.
mountain back to Ram and to Lakshman, and he was able to cure Lakshman.
Uh, so
So
Hanuman,
that is who Hanuman is. And
yeah,
and Maharaji, Ramdas's teacher
uh-huh.
and our teacher, some
Both of
people
my,
thought he was a manifestation of Hanuman. And
uh,
so we are of the Hanuman lineage,
which is basically service to God.
which is basically service to God.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's what Ramdas's name is, Ram Das, and Das is servant, servant to God, which is another form of Hanuman.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you decided to name the center that you're creating there at Ramdas's house Hanuman Maui.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Hanuman Maui, the Ramdas Loving Awareness Sanctuary. That's our full proper name.
Ah,
Yeah.
the
And
Ramanada Loving Awareness Sanctuary.
yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and
Wonderful.
we had a vision that we were going to continue his legacy here on Maui, the caregivers, and several others, and we came up with that name, and it's working well. And we are our own entity. We are a 501c3,
Mm-hmm.
and we are totally independent of any other organization.
Uh-huh. And I was thinking it might be interesting to just talk a little bit about the history of the house and how Ramdas came to live there.
Uh-huh.
Because when I first met you and we were first on Maui together with Ramdas, he was living in another house,
Yes.
which was a lovely house. But I guess he needed to move out of there and went looking for a home. And do you remember the first time you saw the house that you're in now?
Yeah. I do remember that. And the very first time Ramdas saw it, I was away for a couple of days,
Uh-huh.
and he really liked it. There was something about the property and the house that he really loved. Um, and when I went to see it, it was the former residents of the house. Um, they liked to listen to, they were sports, and they would have people come in and listen. They had a big TV screen in the living room, and I think that we would be drinking beer and stuff as they watched the sports. And I felt that feeling when I walked in, and it was a horse farm, so there
Uh,
was no vegetation except for, as you mentioned, a couple of large palm trees. And I'm thinking, well, and there was no swimming pool, and we knew how much Ramdas loved to swim.
right.
So when I first walked in, it was like, oh, okay. Um, I just the feel wasn't great.
A
And
little bit
then
like
I
a sports
came
bar on a horse farm.
and Ramdas absolutely loved it. He could see past what it was.
Uh-huh.
And he loved the fact that he'd have his own study and his own privacy up on the second floor where we are right now.
Uh-huh.
So, that worked really well. And the view is absolutely magnificent. And he so wanted to be close to the water. He just
Mm,
loved watching the ocean and watching the clouds. So the second time I came back, it was after the former owners had left. And when we started moving things in, it totally transformed
uh-huh.
into a temple.
Uh-huh.
Amazing. I didn't think that that was possible, but it truly happened. Once we put the puja table together in the living room, that was it.
You were home.
And we're home. And Ramdas really, he was so content here, and
Yeah.
so happy and so loving. And that's where he worked out his thoughts on being loving awareness.
Uh-huh. I was remembering a moment, probably my first visit to that house, and we were sitting at the breakfast table after breakfast, and I looked at him. I said, Ramdas, you seem to really love it here. And he just smiled and said, yeah. So I said, well, what do you most love about it? And he just he you of course know that where he sat at the breakfast table, he was looking straight out at the ocean
Yes.
and a beautiful landscape in between the house and the ocean, rolling grassy hills and just beautiful, beautiful ravine. down in the center of it, you could see the waves splashing against the rocks. And
Mm,
he just waved his hand at the window like that. He didn't
yes.
say anything. I said, "What do you most love about it?" He just
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. So it's a very, very beautiful place. And so, what are your ideas for what Hanuman Maui can become as we go toward the future?
Uh-huh. Hanuman Maui can serve the community and serve friends and devotees, particularly with the as I we're so happy to be able to put this uh, small temple to construct it. I think it's really, and I believe it'll be the only Hanuman temple, maybe in Hawaii, but certainly in in Maui. So it'll be a place where people can come and show their devotion and pray to Hanuman.
Mhm.
Um, we have already started some practices here at the house, with daily meditation and chanting, and we hope to enlarge that and increase it. And we're thinking that once COVID is over, maybe as soon as August, people who are interested could come for private retreat, um, or come. We may have some small workshops here. Yeah, that's our hope. And some people already expressed interest, and perhaps we can sponsor larger retreats as well.
Uh-huh.
But
Beautiful.
it's a place where we are maintaining Ramdas's area as it was when he was living. So it's a place to come, and just about everyone who's been up here can really feel his presence.
Uh, well, just to repeat what you mentioned, you're sitting in actually what was his desk, right? And
Yes,
then he had his recliner off over your right shoulder.
yes,
And as you mentioned, windows facing out toward the ocean. And then
yes,
behind you, behind Maharaji's picture back there, is another room, which was his bedroom.
right,
And then he had his own kitchen too. It was a really beautiful space, and you
yes,
were mentioning how much he appreciated being able to have his private space and yet also loving to have people come and visit. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So, so you are envisioning people coming for private retreats like they did when he was there. They
yes,
would stay in the Ohana,
yes.
this
We
little
all
separate building.
correct,
Hmm.
right on the property.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, that was a very precious thing to see people come and stay there, which used to be a garage, I guess, and you had it transformed into a guest house, also with its own kitchen and little living room area and beautiful
Yes,
bedroom. Really sweetly done, and an outdoor deck.
yes,
And
which has been rebuilt
aha,
just 6 months ago or so.
aha, wonderful. And to see the people who would come for private retreats when Ram Dass was there, and they would get to spend a few hours, um, 2 or 3 times while they were there with him alone. He would come over to the Ohana and sit with them and visit with them. The transformation that people would go through from when they sort of straggled in with the weight of the world on them and would
Uh,
leave in this radiant space that they had cultivated in just a few days there.
yeah, it
And he took
was
such good
amazing to
care.
watch.
Yeah.
It really was. And there were many people who would come back annually, and some
Uh,
even twice a year.
uh-huh. So that you envision that all going on, and small retreats and workshops and so on. And
Yes.
also, I remember Ramdas saw with the Hanuman Murti that's in Taos now, and the creation of the new temple there, that it would be a place. I had never thought of the fact that it would attract people who were from India, who maybe didn't have a connection with Neem Karoli Baba, but had a connection with Hanuman.
Yes.
And Ramdas knew all that, and I remember talking to him about it once, and he said he was very enthusiastic about that, and happy, and wanted that to be one of the functions of the temple there. So you're sort of recreating the same thing on Maui.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
At one point, I remember having a conversation with Ramdas, more than once actually, and he was hoping that we would be able to stay here at the house, and at that point, when he brought it up, it wasn't something that appeared to be feasible. But he was even talking about having all his ashes here on the property. We do have some of the ashes on the property, in the loving awareness garden, with a mango tree on top, because as well as I do how much Ramdas loved his sweets.
He loved fruit and sweets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not good for a diabetic.
Right. Yeah, and that was just a quick reflection, but I can remember in his early days on Maui how much he just loved getting a nice plate of fruit for breakfast before
Yes.
he had his eggs or whatever he was going to have. Be nice big plate of fruit first, and then it turned out that it just wasn't good for him, and so he could have a little bit, but
Yes.
it was always amazing to watch him just kind of surrender gracefully to knowing how important it was to you to take good care of him. You could see like he was thinking about it. Yeah, I'd really like a little more fruit, but he learned to moderate and to let go of those things that he loved when he had to.
When he
And did
had
it
to, he did. Yes.
Yeah. And then, of course, the faces he would make when he was drinking his potions after breakfast in the morning,
Oh,
herbs and the stuff that Malik had prescribed.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had them a doctor's conference call on a weekly basis, and they would come up with some of the most unique potions for him to take. It was, and it was just amazing. Those doctors really tried. The traditional things weren't working, so they really dug deep to get some fancy things to try to sustain him longer.
It was so amazing. I've told you this before, but there was a long period of many years when I would come to visit. And every time I came, you and he both looked younger than you looked the last time I was there. And whatever you were doing and whatever Maui was doing for both of you was just incredible.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a magical place here.
yeah, yeah. So when you reflect on what, I was thinking your life, the last time we talked, we were talking about I think it was 17 years in the corporate world as an HR director for a fairly large company in the Philadelphia area, living in New Jersey, which you know what that does to people. And and then moved to Maui and
Yeah.
just lived in this paradise with the person you most loved in the world.
Yes.
Extraordinary man, exposed to all these wonderful people on Maui. Um, is there any way that you could encapsulate what you have experienced your transformation to be from the time that you arrived on Maui to now?
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Interesting question. There's certainly just being on Maui is so incredible for me. I cannot envision at this point living any place else. And I think of New Jersey and Philadelphia, and I had a good life there. I really have no complaints, but I would look out my window and see these trees that were dead in the winter, and it looked so barren, and just the feeling inside was like that. uh, I think, and being with Ramdas, I think that it's opened my heart quite a bit. I still have a lot of work to do. I certainly am not ripe, and I catch myself on a regular basis. But as long as I continue to work on those areas that need to be worked on, uh, that makes me feel good. So uh, I think, yeah, obviously my life would be a lot different if I was still on the East Coast. Um, yeah, I just love it here.
Uh, well, the combination of Maui and Ramdas is quite a
Yes.
combination.
Oh yeah, just being with Ramdas and being with the person who was the prime example of love, at unconditional love, and loving awareness, and having the privilege of being close to him for the 15 years that I was. It was just incredible, and I think it really did change my life.
Mm, undoubtedly,
Yeah.
undoubtedly. And I remember the last time we talked, you said that you sort of thought you'd only be there for, temporarily, might have been
2 months.
months, couple 2 months, signed on for
Oh,
2 months.
I signed on for 2 months. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think we I had mentioned that they were in need of someone to help, and I had no background in that area at all whatsoever. I was just, I was primarily a just someone who was in the corporate world, and
Uh-huh.
it was, that was an interesting transformation.
Well, you were doing HR, which is human relations, right? That's
Yes, yeah, that's
right.
correct.
We just took it to a new level,
Yeah,
Dassima.
a different level, yes.
Ramdas. Yeah, yeah. And so many people who would come to see him regularly, who had known him for years, would remark on the years on Maui, on how he kept getting sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. And I
Yeah.
was thinking about that. And I was thinking, I guess he had a ferocious side when he was younger, and even when he was older. But to me, he was just always sweet, and there were a few moments when I saw him in another state, but it never lasted
It
long.
never lasted. If
Hey,
he if so, and primarily he would get temporarily upset if someone was doing something that he could do, if they were, infringing on his independence.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it it would blow through him in a second.
Hmm. And then he'd apologize.
He'd
If he
apologize.
had an outburst, then he'd apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't happen very often at all.
Right. Right. But he did just keep getting sweeter and sweeter and sweeter.
Yeah. He
And
sure did.
your care of him was just beautiful to behold.
We had a lot of really beautiful caregivers. Many of them who are still here at the house
Uh-huh.
at this point.
So who's there with you now that was with Ramdas?
Right now we have Matthew,
Uh-huh.
who was there, and he was, here when Ramdas left his body. And we have Mu, Krishna Prem, or Evan. That's all one
He's got
person.
three
He's got
names.
3 names.
Uh-huh.
So he had spent 3 years with Ramdas,
Right.
and we have Hari Scott Whitmore, who is also here at the house.
Mhm.
And yeah, so they're really anxious to start working on the mandir, and we're going to call in some of the other caregivers to see if they would also like to help with that.
Ah, sweet.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that was another interesting dimension of being at the house was to watch the young people who came and signed on for a period of time to work there. I remember Matt, whose parents were beloved students of Ramdas,
Yes.
I think from Ohio, and he
Correct.
came to Maui. He's still on Maui, right?
He's
I
still
think
on
he became a
Maui. He's a nurse now.
nurse.
Yes.
Yeah, and just seeing how also for the young people who came, the beauty of the way they would blossom in Ram Dass's presence, so
Yes.
and your presence. I mean, it was like
Oh,
you both parented them into a whole new dimension of their lives.
yes. The
Basically,
super
the people.
monkeys. Yes. Trudy
Yeah.
Goodman named them the super monkeys, and
Uh-huh.
it truly fits.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Just amazing. And
Yeah.
I keep in touch with Sita Ram Das, who
Yes.
was such a very precious member of the household when he was there.
Yeah. And he spent about 3 years here too,
Uh-huh.
as well. Yeah. He is a precious human being. I just love him.
Yeah.
So Sita Ram Das and Matthew and Hari and Krishna Prem, they have a kirtan group, and it's called Kripa, and they're just beautiful musicians, and they're taking they're working on improving their skills on a daily basis. It's really nice to watch. They, by the way, put together an album of Hanuman Chalisas, and there's now a deluxe model album that
Uh-huh.
includes 15 different um, kirtan wallas singing their version of the Hanuman Chalisa, including not only each of the members of Kripa, but also Krishnadas and Jai Utal and Nina and Adam Bauer and Chantala, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
So it's beautiful, beautiful album, and you believe you can most of the major music stations you can pick it up on.
Uh-huh. And can they order it from Hanuman Maui also?
And they can also order it from Hanuman Maui.
So
Yes.
you have a website with um, uh, some merchandise that people can order.
Yes,
And
we do. We put that
uh-huh.
together during the year. And we have some unique little things. We actually, a dear friend of ours, Pretty, she has a couple of Ramdas's shirts that we sent her, and she cuts them in the shape of a heart and sews them together. And inside the heart are wood pieces of shavings of the Hawaiian Hanuman Murti.
Oh,
And some, yeah, and it's a beautiful, beautiful puja item. And she's just so delicately done, beautifully done.
oh, wonderful.
And yes, and we put together a little puja box that traveling puja box with the Ram on the outside, and we have Hanuman on the inside, and a little Morti. So we have a lot of interesting uh, items that are for sale in our little web store.
Uh-huh. And the proceeds help to support Hanuman
Hanuman
Maui.
Maui, yes.
So, and we did want to make the statement that you are independent from any other organization affiliated with Ramdas. You're making it on your own there on Maui.
Yes.
And so, what is the best way for people to contribute if they'd like to?
Uh-huh. Well, we have our website is hanumanmaui.org. Then Hanuman is Hanuman,
Huh?
Hanuman. And we would certainly welcome any donation from of any size. Either you can donate directly to Hanuman Maui or to our project for the Mandir. And that if you go on the website, you have a choice of either donation.
Mm-hmm. So you contribute in general to Hanuman Maui
Yes,
or specifically to the construction of the mandir, which is like a small temple, basically.
it is.
Would
Yeah,
that be?
exactly what it'll be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
Very neat.
the people, Matthew has done work on similar types of, it's going to be in it like a dome, and it'll be
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. We have some photos of the sketches on our website if anyone would like to
Oh,
take a look at that.
wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
And
it certainly seems, Dassima, like you're enjoying this phase of your life at Hanuman Maui.
yeah,
Um, Obviously, I'm sure you miss Ram Dass, but physically, but obviously you're filled with spiritual joy about all these new projects that you're working on.
true. I am.
Yeah,
It's
how
just
wonderful.
great. It's wonderful. And it's wonderful to have the support of the people who are here at the house, and our friends who are
Mm.
helping us go forward.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank
It
you.
just seems like an ongoing gift from Ram Dass.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It really does. And I
Yeah.
think that he, looking at us, I think he is really happy about what we're doing here.
Mm. Mm. Oh,
He,
I'm so glad.
yeah, if you recall, he was the force that was instrumental in having Hanuman in the United States.
Right,
and
Right.
he helped with the design and went to India a couple of times to make sure it was done exactly to his specifications, and was so pleased that Hanuman had a proper home before he died. And now the Hanuman that he commissioned here on Maui will also have its proper home.
And it sounds like Stever did much the same thing. Ramdas went back to India repeatedly to make sure that the Hanuman Murti that's in Taos, New Mexico now came out properly. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's
And
absolutely beautiful.
and also the Murti or statue of Neem Karoli Baba, Maharaji, that Natalia Rosenfeld created.
Yes.
And she was in, I guess, Northern California. And when Ramdas was living there, he said he used to go over to her house and check on it and make sure it
Yeah.
was coming out.
The nose is a little too long. Check this cheek. Yeah, he did. He really did. And as a matter of fact, that Hanuman is on. We have that on our website, either the bust or I know you have one of those beautiful Maharaji Mortis as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like he's here in the house with us.
Yes.
Where else would he be?
I mean, where else would he be?
You know, I just, because I think that this question comes up sometimes for people, I had the thought to ask you, for you, how you experience Maharaji, Neem Karoli Baba, and Ramdas and Hanuman. Um, are they all the same, or do you experience them differently?
Yeah. Well, for me, Maharaji has always come through Ramdas. So, as Ramdas said, he was the worm,
Right.
and Maharaji was the fisherman, and we are the fish. So most of my connection is strongest to Ramdas,
Mhm.
but I truly have a connection, and I do see them as being similar. Uh, would be Maharaji. And people said of Maharaji that he was a manifestation of Hanuman. So we're all one.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was remembering when I first met Ramdas in 1973 and had such a powerful feeling coming through him. And without me even, because I started crying, and
Mm.
it was really moving. And I didn't have to say anything. He just looked at me and said, "If you feel something coming through me, it means that Maharaji loves you."
Mm. Wow.
Uh, wow.
Beautiful. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm just so happy to be with you today, and
Feelings are
so
mutual.
grateful that you spent this time with us, Dassima. And just wanted to ask, is there anything else that you would like to share that I haven't covered or brought up? Anything that you'd like to say to people before we say namaste?
Remember loving awareness.
Remember loving awareness. Remember loving awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Ram Dass's favorite mantra
Yes.
in the years on Maui: I am loving awareness.
Yeah.
I am loving awareness.
To take our awareness from our egos and put it into our spiritual heart and see
Very,
everybody as a soul.
Well, I have certainly felt loving awareness with you this afternoon, and it's been just delicious as always.
Same here.
Oh, sweet.
Love you,
Well,
John.
till the next time.
Till the next time.
Till the
Thank you
next
so
time, dear
much.
Dassima. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.